Hello and welcome back to Richmond. So you can see the layout from a slightly different angle today. We have been messing around with the goods yard. We've had a bit of a tidy up on the layout as well, so if we just pan the camera around, you get to see all that mess has been put away. We'll get to that area in a bit, so ignore that for now. But instead, concentrate on just here. Forgive the rails, the track hanging off. As I've mentioned previously, I'm going to be extending the boards to around there, so another foot or so, just here, just to finish the goods yard off. So what we're going to be doing is this board, the new board, is going to be about an inch or so lower, just so that we can fit in the coal drops. So we're going to start the coal drops sort of around here, maybe. The plan originally was to range the rails up, but when I mocked this coal drop up, it was a lot bigger than I thought it would be, even though I sort of made it purposely smaller. And on debating with a few people online on Facebook groups, the consensus was that the coal drops need to be a certain height. So, yes, okay, they can fit a Volkswagen Beetle inside, and possibly even a Series 1 Land Rover. They definitely can't fit a Centurion tank in, so we're not even going to bother with that. These coal drops I mocked up a while back, having no images of the coal drops at Richmond to go on. I still don't really have that many images of the coal drops to base my construction on. However, we do have some sort of decent guesswork that I can sort of at least make some kind of mock-up from. As with all things, a set of coal drops at a branch line terminus in the northeast of England, probably not the most interesting subject to take photos of. So it's just a certain amount of guesswork. But to help facilitate things, this board here will be slightly lower, nearly an inch lower, just so we can have some kind of representation of the coal drops. And this is pretty much how the goods yard will look when the new board's built, and when my new goods shed arrives, when I've paid for it. So this track here I've just placed in place, so this will come around here and it will sort of swing around the front of the station, and this floor level will come out to meet it. Then there'll be a wall sort of along there to about there at the end of the passenger dock. And this track here is just a loading siding. There'll be a bit of a dock here with a crane on it, possibly a cattle dock as well. I'm not exactly sure. I need to consult my books and probably do a bit more research before I do anything sort of concrete. And these two tracks here will be there's like a twin set of coal drops around here. If you can see it, this track here coming out the back of the loco shed also had a set of coal drops on it. I was toying with making a short sort of baseboard piece and adapting this to fit, but it comes out about 6 inches. I don't really know if it's worth it. Maybe something for the future. I'm not going to get rid of this, I don't think. It's not really worth anything to anybody except me, but it's something to think of for the future if I decide to go down that route. Now, as we mentioned previously as well, we're going to extend the platform. We're going to extend the layout basically by inserting a foot wide or foot long piece of baseboard between where the water tower is and the platform end. So if we just quickly zoom in, you'll be able to see that there. Zoom in a bit more and pan up. So yeah, so there'll be a foot long piece of baseboard inserted there, just to extend the layout slightly, just to make for a bit more operational flexibility in the layout, and also sort of put things into perspective a bit more. The signal box wasn't at the end of the platform on the real Richmond, it was sort of some way down it, probably a lot closer to the train shed than it is now. We've done that just so that the two sidings on the downside can be of a usable length I can put things in. Probably carriage sidings would be the best thing for those, though the siding on the far side would be for oil tanks, petrol tanks, fuel tanks. and that ends sort of, let's just move you around a bit, that ends sort of around there somewhere. So let me just zoom back out again, just to give you a whole perspective of the whole layout. You can see I have tidied the layout in the rower room up quite a bit. It was a bit of a mess yesterday. The garage was a bit of a tipping ground in the months leading up to Christmas and over Christmas, so we decided to have a tidy up and get things sort of a lot cleaner. So that's the fiddle yard there. I am toying with extending the fiddle yard by another foot or so, just to give a bit more room. It's a bit late in the day now to think about extending the scenic area, although if I added the foot to that end of the fiddle yard boards, I could probably bring the whole thing this way by a foot. It might work. It's something to think about for the future, preferably before I start ballasting and track laying. So if we just zoom into that corner where my bottle of Lucozade is located over there. So at the minute that corner is, I've just moved all my tools and stuff that I'm using regularly to that corner, just so they are to hand but out of my way. So we could extend the layout there by a foot and still keep the same length of fiddle yard. I think it might work. So we'll think about that when we've done the other three baseboard extensions. So we've moved over to what I like to call the control desk, this piece here. When I originally built the layout, it was going to be baseboard level and there was going to be an embankment or a viaduct there. The original layout was going to be based around Chesterfield Marketplace, but then plans changed and I bought the Richmond station, and it's taken on a life of its own. So the plan then, when I changed to DCC, was going to be to put a control panel here and have it sort of DC controlled, so old school. So I would stick with what I knew as my previous layout. To those of you that have been following my channel for a long time, my previous layout was an N-gauge layout called Whetstone, which was based on the Great Central, the first station south of Leicester Central. And that was DC, and I'd wired up all the points and everything was working, and I'd built myself a nice little control panel, and I was going to do the same. But then, after weighing up the pros and cons, I mean, I've talked about this so many times before in other videos, and also when I decided to switch to DCC in the first place. I was offered a DCC controller relatively cheap, in fact, peanuts, so I went for it, and I was still going to, like I say, control it out DC, controlling the points and signals and stuff DC. But then, after a third change of controller, and you know, we've talked about the Digitrax controller before, and it's so easy to use and it's so easy to change points on it, a lot easier than my last two controllers, and a lot easier than some other sort of handheld throttles that I've seen in the past. I don't know how easy the Gauge Master Prodigy or the NCE Power Cab are to change points, but I'm assuming, having not used those, that they're relatively easy. But this is a piece of cake to change points, and we've shown you in a previous video how easy it is. Now, I'm still toying with the idea of having some kind of mimic panel, as shown by the diagram that I've temporarily stuck to the wall. Now, one idea that I've got is to have a larger sort of A3 size or larger panel on there with track circuits and LEDs to show point position, all of which I can do with DC. My DCC Concepts point decoders all have the facility for LEDs to show point position, and they also have the ability to have separate switches, so we could still have a row of switches down here. I'd love it if I could afford DCC Concepts Cobalt S switches to make it look like a proper signal box, but unfortunately they're like £30 odd per switch. I think they're a little bit out of my reach, and if I buy one a month, I'll still be buying them in about 3 years. So that don't think is going to happen. One alternative is to use the Pico switches because they look almost signal box like, or we could just have a small panel with a row of push buttons to set routes and then control everything else with a controller. That's something for the future. At the minute I'm happy enough using the controller to set routes. For the fiddle yard, as you've seen before, I have a control panel that sets routes via a diode matrix. That was going to be another thing I was going to use on the scenic side, but obviously that's not happening now. I've gone DCC. So if we just tilt back down to that. Another thing you'll notice is I've tied it up by adding this piece of plywood to the side, so it covers up all the wires and muck that's underneath there. We've tried to clean it out as best we can. There's only 3 screws holding it on, so if we need to get behind there to access the points, the wiring and whatnot, we can easily do so. So at the moment everything is ticking along nicely. We're going to start we're going to test the points and stuff when we've got all the points controlled by the controller. So we have the gauge master point decoder there, that's going in the goods yard. We also have another DCC context point decoder on the way. This time it's an ADS 4SX decoder, because we only need 4 outputs, and there's no point buying another 8-way because we've got that. So hopefully by the time I make my next video, all the points on the entire layout will be controlled either by the controller or by the fiddle yard control board. And then after a period of testing, which may or may not be an excuse to run trains, we're going to start thinking about ballast, at least on from this board sort of back towards the station, and we'll leave, or from there rather, and we'll leave that bit to let fate decide whether we extend the fiddle yard board by a foot or so. It will certainly help have a bit more of a scenic area on, so I'm leaning towards it, but it's quite a lot of work, so watch this space. So I hope you've liked this short little video just describing my immediate plans. As usual, please subscribe. The more the merrier. The more people I can share this layout with, the better, and hopefully inspire you and share my findings when I get new products. Please like the video, please comment. I'll reply to every comment whenever I can. And don't forget to click that notification bell so that you get notifications when I upload a new video. So bye for now, and I'll see you soon.